Where's Chris? That's all right. Okay, good evening to all. And tonight is our town board meeting of Wednesday, November 12th, 2014. And I'd like to ask our clerk, Christian Sampson, to call the roll.
Councilman, Deputy Supervisor Withers. Present. Councilman Ullman.
Here.
Councilman Friedman.
Here.
Councilwoman Charles. Here. Supervisor St. Lawrence.
Here. I'd like to ask Deputy Supervisor Withers to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're just going to take a couple items out of order very quickly. Just a couple personnel items and also a donation. So we'll do. Are both? Is Ray here too?
No, Ray's here.
Okay. Then why don't we do the donation first, Linda? Oh, Ray's here. Okay, Linda, you can come up and Chris can go and get the... I'd like to take on the agenda items number 3 under Personnel, A, B, C, and D, and our Director of Personnel, Linda Condon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Item 3A is a resolution to reclassify the position of senior clerk to senior clerk French Creole speaking in the tax office.
Moved by? Withers. Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by? Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Now that we have reclassed that position, I imagine you have someone to fill that position.
I do. Item B is a resolution to appoint Reno Santon as senior clerk French Creole speaking in the tax office effective Monday.
Moved by? Councilwoman Charles, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Come on up, Ray. Ray has worked for the town, I think, for 2 decades. Right, Ray? Congratulations. Ray, I say to you, mwen content vini parler avec nous aujourd'hui. And it truly is an honor. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Item 3C
Yes.
is a resolution to reclassify the position of assistant automotive mechanic in the central garage to automobile mechanic 1 in central garage.
Moved by?
Charles.
Councilwoman Charles, seconded by?
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
And the last, item 3D, is a resolution to appoint Sean Spillman, auto mechanic 1 in central garage.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Congratulations, Sean. Come on up. Congratulations, Sean, and I see your wife is here, and congratulations to your wife as well. And I know that the two of you are going off to Disneyland, so I think that's fantastic. So you could actually be excused now. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. Go home and get your rest of your packet. And Ray as well. Thank you very much and congratulations. We have one item. I'll recognize our town clerk, Christian Sampson, who is actually president of all the town clerks in the state of New York of their association. And I'll turn it over for this item on the agenda, which is item 6B.
Well, Mr. Supervisor, Julius Graithman is here in the audience. I'm going to ask Julius to come up. Is Mrs. Graithman here? Is Mrs. Graithman here?
Oh, no, she's a little under the weather.
Tell her we miss her. Just about a week ago, and I'll let Julius tell the story. As you know, Mr. Graithman is also the chairman of the Rockland County Sewer Commission. But a while back, he and his brother had an interesting assignment, and I'm going to let Mr. Graithman describe it and then make his presentation to the town board.
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, Mr.
Members
Gray.
of the town board? One of them is one of my former commissioners, Brendel. And ladies and gentlemen, the contribution that I'm making is a map that was printed by myself and my brother when we were younger in the printing business. And this is a very historic map for Rockland County, and a very historic map really for the town of Ramapo, because what this map is, it's a landmarks of Rockland County, and those red dots that you see on the map are all the landmarks that run back to the 1700s and some back even further. One of them in particular, which the town of Ramapo owns, is the Sloat House, and is delineated on the map in the lower right, in the lower center of this map. But there are lots of sites that are very historical for all of Rockland County when it first started. I've had this in my possession for over 25 years, and we're kind of getting some of the stuff that I could donate into other hands rather than have it in a closet rolled up. So I hope that the town accepts this map and has it displayed properly. And I invite the audience, when the map is displayed properly, to come and take a look at it. Take a look at some of the areas, perhaps even an area where you live now, and you see what it was called back then in the 1700s. So thank you. Thank you to the town for taking this historic map and displaying it for the public.
And the red dots are sandstone houses. And the donation of the map is free, and it'll be about $3,000 to frame it and put it under glass and everything. Thank you, Jules. And it's great for you to preserve the history. And I also, when it comes to history, I want you to know everybody in this room, everybody in this county will never forget that you lost your son on 9/11, your son David. We pray for him. We think of him all the time. God bless you and your wife, Ruth.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will open up the public hearing. I know people want to be able to speak, and so, Council, do we have all postings on this public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. With the board's permission, I'll read into the record the notice of tonight's public hearing. We have received a number of documents which we will deem as exhibits for the hearing. So I will begin as follows. Notice is hereby given by the Town Board of the Town of Ramapo that pursuant to the provisions of the Town Law of the State of New York, a public hearing will be held at 8:00 p.m. at the Ramapo Town Hall, 237 Route 59, Suffern, New York, 10901, on the 12th day of November 2014, to consider the adoption of a local law entitled Proposed Local Law Amending Local Law Number 10-2004 Zoning, as amended, to change the zoning map of the town of Ramapo, petitions of 171 North Pascack Road Corporation and Monsey Lumber Company, and an amendment to the comprehensive plan of the town of Ramapo. A copy of the comprehensive plan amendment and the local law, and the comprehensive plan amendment is entitled Pascack Ridge, a copy which has been on file in the office of the town clerk of the town of Ramapo, 237 Route 59, Suffern, New York. Notice is hereby further given that all interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard. We have received a number of documents which they will be deemed as exhibits for purposes of the hearing, which will commence tonight and be continued on to other nights. Exhibit number 1 is the notice of the adjourned public hearing on proposed zoning law amendment and comprehensive plan amendment. Exhibit number 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Journal News, the town's official newspaper. Exhibit number 3 is the affidavit of posting by the town clerk. Exhibit 4 is the affidavit of posting and mailing provided by one of the 2 petitioners, 171 North Pascack Road. Exhibit number 5 is the affidavit of posting and mailing by the other petitioner, that's by Monsey Lumber Company. Exhibit number 6 is a copy of the proposed local law to change the zoning map. Exhibit number 7 is the proposed comprehensive plan amendment. Exhibit number 8 is a letter received from the Village of Spring Valley Office of Building Inspector dated August 3rd, 2014. Exhibit number 9 is a letter received with an attached resolution from the Clarkstown Planning Board dated November 5th, 2014. We have, as exhibit number 10, a memorandum from the Planning Board of the town of Ramapo regarding 171 North Pascack Road zone change. Exhibit number 11 is a memorandum from the Ramapo Planning Board regarding the petition of Monsey Lumber Company zone change. Exhibit number 12 is the zone change petition of 171 Pascack Road. Exhibit number 13 is the zone change petition of Monsey Lumber Company. Exhibit number 14 is the general municipal law review of the County of Rockland, which was only received this afternoon, and copies have been distributed to the board this evening. And finally, exhibit number 14 is a copy of Clarkstown Town Board Resolution number 488-2014. With those comments made as part of the record, we're now able to open up the public hearing. Traditionally, Mr. Supervisor, we've invited the applicants to make initial presentations, but the order is certainly subject to the board's discretion.
I want to welcome everybody again. Our town clerk is going to hand out forms for anybody that wants to speak. You can just fill it out. When we do get to the portion of speaking, we're going to have the first speaker will be George Holman, and then Deputy Supervisor Shirley Lasker, and then County Legislator Chris Carey, and then it'll be open up to the public. All you have to do is just fill that out and just put your name and your address. I do want to make it clear to people that this is an application that has been presented to this board. This board has not made any judgment on this, nor would it be appropriate for this board to make any prejudgment. You all may remember in cases where the process wasn't followed or a town prejudged. A recent case was in Orangetown, and Orangetown was sued and lost $8 million. So what we do in this process, in this public hearing, we'll hear from the applicant, we'll hear from our planner, from Frederick P. Clark, we will hear from all of you. There will be no vote on any of these amendments tonight. We will hear from the public. We want answers to all the questions that people are going to bring up. And we will have further public hearings, which we will announce, 2, maybe 3, as many as it takes in order to get the information, and whether it's about drainage or traffic or parking, whatever it may be. And so that's how the process is. So I don't want people to think that the board is taking some action. This was brought to this board. We will listen to the applicant, as you will. We will ask questions. After you've asked questions, I'm sure members of the board will have some questions, and then we will adjourn the public hearing to future dates. So that's the groundwork. So with that being said, we will ask the applicant to come up and make a presentation, and then we will have our planners make any statements, and then we'll go right into the public hearing.
Mr. Supervisor, we have two separate petitions by adjoining landowners. My suggestion would be that we ask for the attorney for Monsey Lumber to perhaps begin.
Okay. And we'd like you to be able to put the boards in a way that people can see them in the audience, and so that our camera, Jack, as long as you can see them as well. Just turn it a little bit toward the camera, that's it.
Ready? Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the Town Board. Ryan Carbon, 11 Tower Drive, Pomona, for the applicant, Monsey Lumber. Good evening. Good evening to you and to the members of the public. Just to amplify a little bit of the summary that was provided by your counsel, Monsey Lumber submitted a petition for a comprehensive plan amendment and the zone change. We own about 20 acres located at the intersection of three municipalities: the town of Ramapo, the village of Spring Valley, and the town of Clarkstown. The site we're talking about and those areas around it, for those folks who have been in town for a long time, was a critical part of Ramapo's recreation summer resort heyday in the 1950s and the 1960s. My mother was actually a counselor at the White House Hotel on Pascack Road in the summer of 1959. So for those of us who've been around a while, I grew up in the neighborhood too. So this used to be a part of our recreation economy. Certain portions of that hotel area have been developed, or the old White House now has semi-attached housing across the street, and this area has laid fallow. I would urge the board to take notice. Not every place that used to have a bustling summer resort economy has fared as well as the town of Ramapo. And you can go to the old hotels in Sullivan County and still see the heaps of trash laying there on the site. There was a photo essay in the New York Times of all the garbage still from the old Grossingers just laying there like debris. And that's certainly not a model for redevelopment of any particular site. So you look at what's going on in this particular region of town, you look at the housing trends, and it becomes an appropriate site for multifamily redevelopment. Just noting conceptually, there was some discussion in the press and in some of the comment letters about single-family versus multifamily housing. I wanted to point out to the board there was a report that came out last week. In 2006, only 17% of residential construction in the United States of America was multifamily. That number is now in 2014 35% across the country. The real estate economy, the financing, is no longer oriented in major fashion towards the development of single-family homes, particularly not in suburban areas which are in proximity to urban cores such as Rockland. So the trends, when we speak about housing, obviously there is a particular need, and the Rockland County Department of Planning, even though it disapproves of the zone change, it noted the need for increased housing approvingly in their general municipal review, actually suggested the board consider somewhat less density of 8 units per acre as opposed to what we're proposing, but there's clearly a demand for housing which legitimizes updating the comprehensive plan, and multifamily housing is in vogue as a development scenario. So what do we find in this particular region? And if I could hand to your clerk, Mr. Supervisor, we've provided a map which we have up for the public to see on the board there, which is a reflection of the various densities that are in the vicinity. As I said, we're at the intersection of a number of different municipal entities, and interestingly, you have a whole bunch of different housing types. About a quarter of a mile from the site, you have developments in the town of Clarkstown which substantially exceed 10 units per acre. One of them is up to 25 units per acre in the town of Clarkstown. You have multifamily units in the adjacent village of Spring Valley of varying densities as well. So you have numerous sites here in which you have densities similar to what the applicant has proposed here. And that is why this is an appropriate location for the board to consider a comprehensive plan update and to change the zoning.
Ms. Carbone, if I may interrupt you just for a second. So the map that you've just submitted to the board we'll deem as exhibit number 15 for purposes of the hearing? Okay.
Sounds like a fine number to me.
And I just interrupt 1 second, Mr. Carbone. I just wanted to also recognize a newly elected county legislator. I didn't mention it before. Lon Hofstein's here as well, so glad to see you here today, Lon. Go ahead, Mr. Carbone.
Our proposal, we own 20 acres. Monsey Lumber owns, I say we, it's not me, it's not my money. Monsey Lumber owns 20 acres of the 28.5 acres that are being considered as part of this potential rezoning. And we submitted to you, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board, a petition. We attached to that a number of exhibits which your council recite, and I'd just like to give the highlights, a little bit of our development proposal. I have 3 additional professionals with me here. I have John Atzel from Atzel, Skatasa, and Ziegler, who will discuss the layout of the site. He designed the site, and he will discuss that in further detail. We have Leonard Jackson here, who is our drainage engineer. Leonard was responsible over a 3-year period of working with the Rockland County Drainage Agency to develop suitable drainage for this site. And we also have Harry Baker, who is our traffic engineer, who extensively studied the impact that the rezoning and our development would have on traffic, and he submitted a report to you, which was reviewed by your planning consultant. But Mr. Baker will be happy to provide the highlights of his analysis to you, Mr. Supervisor, as well as to the members of the public that are here.
And Mr. Carbone, they'll stay around and listen to what the public has to say as well, so they can answer questions?
Well, I should certainly hope that they'll stay at least as long as I will, and I plan to hear it all out. We are proposing 210 units of construction, 10%, 192 market rate units, 18 units which will be below market units. The below market units, the 10% affordable housing set aside, will be allocated through a lottery that will be administered by either the Rockland County Housing Action Coalition or a similarly Department of Housing and Urban Development sanctioned housing lottery agency. There has always been an interest and a need to make sure that new housing is constructed is appropriately allocated throughout the community. We believe the use of a lottery, which was successful in allocating the state-funded affordable units in Spring Valley, and you had full distribution across the demographics of the Spring Valley community, and we are looking for a similar agency to administer that lottery with respect to those units that would be located in the town of Ramapo to ensure compliance with all of the fair housing regulations. We have divided our site into 6 different neighborhoods, and I want to point out the contrast when you're able to develop a parcel of this size as opposed to most of the development which generally takes place, which is on a lot-by-lot basis. When you're developing on a lot-by-lot basis, you do not have the ability that we have to create as many shared amenities. Here we've been able to create 6 separate neighborhoods. It's a planned development, each one of those neighborhoods having the parking directly for those units that are there, and each one of those neighborhoods and those housing clusters has its own playground as well. The town code requires about 7,000 square feet of a playground space for this proposal of this size. We have provided in excess of 14,000 square feet of playground space. We think it's very, very important to make sure that there are adequate recreation amenities that are available to the families that live here. So we are proud of that. We've provided parking, which we believe sufficient to address the needs of both residents and visitors. We have submitted drainage analysis, which demonstrates that we'll be able to comply with zero net runoff requirements, and Mr. Jackson will go into that in further detail as well. So I think that we have a basis in terms of the community character and the diversity of housing types in this zone, including extensive multifamily housing in each of the adjacent municipalities. If you look on the map there, the areas that are in color is multifamily housing development. So the area that is in red is multifamily multifamily housing development in the town of Clarkstown, and the area that is yellow are multifamily parcels that are located in the village of Spring Valley, and that is a larger version, Mr. Supervisor, of the map that we have distributed to each and every one of you. So, evaluating first and foremost the issue of community character, it is clear that multifamily housing has a home in this particular region of the town, particularly on these municipal boundaries, based on developments that were not approved by this board, but approved by constituent bodies in the village of Spring Valley and the town of Clarkstown. With respect to the specific environmental criteria that would be applicable to your analysis, the record that we will develop tonight will demonstrate, Mr. Jackson will testify that this will not have adverse impacts on drainage, which cannot be mitigated. Mr. Baker will testify that there is no change in the level of service classification of any of the roadways that are adjacent to this municipality, and the level of traffic service will not be meaningfully impacted if the board were to adopt a zone change. And Mr. Atzel will speak through some of the site-specific issues of how we handle our circulation and the layout of our development to make sure that this meets the criteria for a planned community as well. That's a little bit of the overview of our proposal. I know there's a lot of technical information that the board requires. With your permission, I would like to invite our engineer, Mr. Atzel, to talk through the way the site is laid out, to be followed by Mr. Jackson to discuss the drainage and Mr. Baker to discuss the traffic.
Okay?
Thank you. You want to speak from here, John? Get them. Got the...
Just turn it slightly toward the camera so people at home can see we're out live on. Is that good, Jack? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and the public. My name is John Atzel. I'm with Atzel, Nasher, and Ziegler with surveyors, engineers, and planners for the project. As Mr. Carbon has stated, this is a planned community with about 6 separate individual neighborhoods. The main traffic layout that we do have is the extension of Springbrook Road, which will go through to Ewing Avenue. It will be a public road. It will be a road dedicated to the town of Ramapo. It will be maintained by the town of Ramapo, and there will be no parking on Springbrook Road. Each area will have its own parking in front of the buildings, but not on the road. The units being separated will have individual parking areas designated for each unit. The 18 affordable units will be located here down in the southeast corner. We provided previous approvals were made for sewer, which will still stand, and the traffic will actually, Springbrook Road, which is actually the neighborhood that Springbrook Road is in, is about 4,700 linear feet of road with only one access point in. By bringing Springbrook Road through, we'll provide a secondary access for emergency vehicles, fire, ambulance, and police to access our site and the sites to the south of us. And, I mean, as far as the planning is concerned, we're requesting 210 units. That works out to about 10.5 units per acre, which is under the MR12 zoning that we're requesting. And the parcels along Pascack Road, the other application, I don't know if they're going to be here tonight, but they'll make their presentation, and I really think that's about it for our end of it right now.
Okay. And who's going to speak next? Mr. Jackson on the drainage? Okay. Are you guys going to talk the entire time through the presentation? Are you going to talk the entire time through the presentation?
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's always a job to try to make drainage sound very interesting. Let me start out by saying that 41 years ago, my first municipal client was the town of Ramapo. I did a flood control job on Rensselaer and Greenbridge Way, and so far it seems to be working. About 25 years ago, as a consultant to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, I studied the Pascack Brook and all the other major rivers in Rockland County. And I prepared the flood maps, which became part of the floodplain ordinance of the town of Ramapo. Recently, they were updated a couple of years ago. Since then, of course, I've studied most of the rivers in the state of New York and New Jersey and Connecticut as well. The Pascack Brook runs through this site, And the floodplain has to be dealt with, and of course, I developed that floodplain for FEMA. And in a previous version of this particular project, we analyzed it and we made sure that the houses in the city, on the site would be safe. And of course, we would have no impact downstream, because one of the major rules is that you can't increase flooding as a result of your project. And that's what's going to happen with this project if it's approved in this particular format. Since that time, there have been other regulations which state that you can't decrease the quality of the water, and that's a New York State DC requirement. And that's done by various methodologies, which we've looked into. The resultant being that if this project is approved and developed the way it's proposed by the developer, we will not increase flooding on anyone. The project will be safe. The water quality will remain high, and we will conform to all the requirements with regard to drainage. I've looked at the project, and of course I worked on this project with the Rockland County Drainage Agency. It was approved in a different format. I think that that approval still is valid, and most of the infrastructure that pertains to detention and so forth will be maintained in a different configuration. But the upshot is that when this project is developed, it will not have any deleterious effect on anyone. I think finally, when this board makes the decision in terms of a secret determination, it will find there will be no significant adverse impact, which of course what has to happen for any project. But the upshot is, I believe the project in this configuration will certainly conform to all the laws. It will not hurt anybody. It'll be an asset to the community. And I say that having studied this particular river and this project over many years. And that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Carbon, anybody else who wants to speak?
Mr. Harry Baker, who prepared a extensive traffic analysis, which was reviewed also by the planning consultant. And so Mr. Lang will be able to speak to that, but I'd like Mr. Baker to give the highlight.
Okay. After Mr. Baker's presentation, we'll go right to the public and let the public come up and speak. And just to let people know, when the public speaks, we have no time frame on the amount of time you want to take and speak. You can speak for as long as you like. We always would ask that people would take 5 or 6 minutes, and if they still feel they need to talk, they could speak again later, just because there are a lot of people that like to speak. But we'll have Mr. Baker.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I should clarify, since we have 2 separate petitions before us this evening by adjoining landowners, I think we should have the second applicant make its presentation, and then we should open up to the
I
public.
didn't see their attorney. Was their attorney Mr. Nakata?
I don't think he's here, but they do have a representative
Oh,
here.
okay. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. My name's Harry Baker. I'm a practicing traffic engineer for about 35 years. I've worked a lot in Rampo, town of Clarkstown, and all throughout Rockland County and other places. I was asked to study the traffic conditions for this project, and there are a couple things that we did. The first thing we did was we went out and counted the existing traffic from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon, as well as a midday Sunday, to look at the conditions certainly during the weekday when people travel back and forth to work, and also on Sunday when people are traveling also. We looked at the area surrounding the project, the specific intersections. Just bear with me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
The specific intersections that we looked at were Ewing and Pascack Road, Pascack Mirror Lake Road and Northbrook Road, Pascack and Forestbrook and Springbrook Road. People went out, we had people out there counting traffic. They counted both the cars, trucks, and buses, so we know the mix of the traffic. We have the school buses in there and any other buses that were traveling. Based on the existing data, we calculated the level of service for which is the operational, how the intersections operate. Level of service A is the best, level of service F is the worst. For the base condition, everything operated at levels of service A and B during the time periods. The morning peak was 7:15 to 8:15 and 5 to 6 in the afternoon. And the morning peak is early because people are getting out early to head to the city or to Westchester and other places as well. And the same conditions were on the weekend. We then create what's called the no-build situation, which is the situation when in the same year that the project would open, but without the project. And basically, when we looked at those conditions, the only change that occurred was the level of service on the on the northbound approach at Pascack Road, at the Pascack Road, Mirror Lake Road, and Northbrook intersection in the PM peak changed from level of service C to level of service D, and that's due to the natural background growth of traffic. I use the 2% background growth rate, so basically what you do is you take the existing conditions, you grow the traffic by 2%, and then you reanalyze the traffic. And that's what you measure the build against the no build. The next step was to determine how many trips would be generated by the proposed project. I used the Institute of Transportation Engineers' 9th trip generation manual, which is the accepted practice in the industry. For this particular project with 210 units, it would generate 88 trips in the morning peak and 71 trips in the afternoon peak. These trips were assigned to the street network, and we then rerun the capacity analysis to determine what the impact is of the project, and there were no changes in the level of service. So basically, even with this additional traffic, everything stayed the same. Even the North Pascack Lake, Mirror Lake, Northbrook Road, Pascack Road, northbound approach stayed at level of service D. So basically, the project does not provide any impacts to the local street network, and that's the conclusion we came up with.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. So now we will have someone come up for the applicant for Mr. Colishaw's property.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
My name is Anthony Celentano. I'm the engineer for 171 North Pascack Road. We're the minor piece. We're 3.5 acres, and we are surrounded on 3 sides by this 22.5 acre development. And my applicant would like to be considered to be rezoned along with the rezoning of the major applicant. Presently on our site, we have existing multifamily dwellings on the site, so this would be opportune for these existing multifamily dwellings to conform to the MR12 zone. If my applicant did decide to develop, the maximum he could put on would be 36 units total. So that's, we're here just for consideration of the zone change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, as I said, we let people speak for as long as they'd like, and we'd like you to kind of keep it a little concise just so we can get everybody in a timely basis. We are going to have Mr. Holman speak first, and then Deputy Supervisor Lasker, and then we're going to have Chris Carey, because I know they have other places to go. And then after they speak, if there's somebody that has something really, an emergency at home or something with the babysitter and has to speak, then we'll certainly entertain trying to let you speak at that time. Otherwise, I'll just go through the list here that was handed to me by the clerk. Councilman Holman.
Thank you, Supervisor St. Lawrence and honorable members of the Town Board of Ramapo. My name is George Holman. I'm a councilman in the town of Clarkstown. I'm also not too far from where this proposed development is. I'm a resident of Nanuet, probably, as the crow flies, about 3/4 of a mile from the location. And I'm here tonight to just raise a few points, and I'm delighted that the supervisor was so clear in his initial instructions to all of us gathered here that there's no action taking place tonight. You know, as a councilman for the last 5 years, and prior to that 5 years on the planning board in the town of Clarkstown, I wasn't a member of any of the boards that, just listening to Mr. Carbon's presentation, that approved any of the multifamily projects in the area. Perhaps if I was, I would not have approved some of the density that's there. Just because there's density nearby doesn't mean that we have to continue that problem with additional density. One point I do just want to bring up, again, I'm just not having seen the map beforehand, but having done a little bit of review and knowing this area fairly well in the Clarkstown side, I would want to point out that I believe almost none of the multifamily projects that are in Clarkstown that have been approved are connected into single-family streets. And I think that's a major concern and a major issue that we would have. I know that Avalon Gardens has a connection, but there's a fence and a gate, and it's for emergency purposes only into Alice Drive. And the Hamlets and L'Ambiance and the other multifamily projects in that area, again, they predate my time on the town council and my 5 years prior to that on the planning board, none of them connect into single-family neighborhoods. So I think that's a major concern. That's certainly a major concern that I have, that Councilman Borelli has, that the other members of the town board in Clarkstown have. In a little while, you'll hear from a resident. She actually drove up with me tonight, Margaret Comer. And her late husband, Jim, who passed away about 5 years ago, was actually the president of the Forest Brook Civic Association. And Jim had done an awful lot of work with the town board and with residents in that area to address some of the flooding issues and some of the concerns. A lot of work was done for sidewalks and some improvement within that neighborhood. There was also some collaborative work that took place between the town of Clarkstown with our highway department, along with Ramapo, along with Spring Valley, as it related to illegal dumping and some issues that had taken place on the Ramapo and the Spring Valley side, not too far from the subject property. So there's been good collaboration and good work back and forth. When Margaret speaks later, she's going to talk a little bit about the concerns that the residents have and the concerns that they have with flooding. And I believe, again, I'm not to put it, I know it's a difficult balancing act. I know that I went through this as a member of the planning board, and we deal with it when we have zone changes and applications that come before us on our own town board. And the consultants will get up and they'll explain about there's not going to be this adverse impact or that adverse impact, or we're going to mitigate it. But the reality is that this is a very difficult property to navigate. There's steep slopes. There are drainage and flooding issues in this area that our town has addressed. We believe that they will be adversely impacted. There's also high tension wires, and I would encourage you that as you go through this process, certainly I would recommend against it, and I would recommend no connection for whatever development that's coming through that's going to adversely impact single-family neighborhoods. And again, to reference the density as it relates to Clarkstown, it's not a fair appraisal, because if you were to go through the multifamily developments within the Clarkstown section that are referenced on the map, none of them connect. And where there is a connection, it's for emergency services purposes, and there's a gate. That's not what's recommended. That's not what's proposed here. This will have a definite adverse impact on these residents, our Clarkstown residents. It will also have an adverse impact, we believe, just by the density and I think the lack of diversity potentially. There's a significant number of bedrooms that are being proposed, and that could generate an additional number of children for the already stressed East Ramapo School District, and we share that school district, our municipalities, Spring Valley, Clarkstown, and Ramapo. And I think we need to do all that we can to ensure that the school district's not overburdened. And finally, I would just, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. I don't want to take much more time, because I know that you have a lot of other individuals that are going to get up and speak, and the residents, and you want to hear from them in particular. But I just echo the comments that were brought forward from our town board. Our town board did pass a resolution. It's part of the record here, that if you do proceed in the future with this, we absolutely believe that there will be adverse impacts, environmental impacts, and that will require a positive declaration under seeker. We also believe that, again, we're recommending against it, and we certainly wouldn't want to have the connection that's going to adversely impact our residents. But I do want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm delighted that there's no action proposed tonight. The last two things I would finish up with. There's a good number of residents that are here from the town of Clarkstown, and I would request that we've passed around a sign-in sheet with some information, and our office, the town of Clarkstown, will get the contact information of the Clarkstown residents to your office, and I'd request that myself and the other members of the town council, as well as our supervisor and any of the other residents from the town of Clarkstown that have taken the time to come out here tonight, be notified of any future meetings that take place with this project, so we can weigh in as this moves forward. Thank you.
We will take the name and address of everyone, and we will notify them. Thank you, George. Thank you, Mr. Holman. And on a personal note, thank you for the incredible work you do for people with special needs in this county, and it's really very commendable. Our next speaker is the Deputy Supervisor, Shirley Lasker.
Good evening, members of the board and members of the public. My name is Shirley Lasker, and I have been a resident in Clarkstown since 1989 and a town board member since January of 2000. I'm here in both capacities tonight. I am here speaking on behalf of Supervisor Alex Gromack, who had a conflict in his schedule and regrets he couldn't be here tonight. He did send a letter out to all the residents, and we did send a press release out opposing this project. And I'm also representing, Councilwoman Stephanie Hauser couldn't be here, so I'm also representing her as well. They wanted me to send a very strong statement against the proposed zone change for Pascack Ridge that's on the agenda tonight. Clarkstown received your referral on October 21st, and the Planning Board reviewed it on October 22nd. They voted to recommend against the zone change and asked that the Town Board oppose the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning. At our last Town Board meeting of November 5th, the vote was unanimous, opposing the zone change that borders our town. I've come to voice our strong objection to the Town of Ramapo's proposed amendments to its zoning map and comprehensive plan. The Town of Clarkstown was provided with a copy of the proposed amendments because general municipal law requires that projects within 500 feet of the municipal border be referred to the neighboring municipality. The proposed project at issue here is directly adjacent to the Town of Clarkstown's border. The proposed amendments would pave the way for an extremely dense development. The Pascack Ridge subdivision that would have significant impacts on our residents. The amendments before you tonight would rezone a 28.5 acre parcel adjacent to our border from medium-density residential, which currently allows less than 3 units per acre, to multifamily residential, which would allow for up to 12 units per acre, an increase in density of 400%. I think it's important that we put this into perspective. The current zoning would allow for approximately 40 single-family homes on 1/3 acre lots. The proposed zoning would allow for approximately 210 units. In addition, according to documents provided by the town, each of these units could contain as many as 4 to 6 bedrooms. Neighboring municipalities have a voice in these decisions for a reason. The impacts of such a development do not magically stop at municipal borders. The increased traffic, the exponential burden on our water supply and sewer infrastructure, the impacts on our already overwhelmed drainage and school systems, and the effect on mutual aid on our emergency service providers will be borne by our residents. I'd also like to point out that you are considering an amendment to your town's comprehensive plan to accommodate a single development. That's not what comprehensive planning is all about. Comprehensive planning requires just what it implies, a comprehensive look at all of the potential land uses within the town and the potential associated impacts. Ramapo's comprehensive plan explicitly excluded the future rezoning of this property for good reason. The town's comprehensive plan recognized that the current zoning for this area is appropriate. What is not appropriate is to consider an amendment of this magnitude without looking at the town's comprehensive plan as a whole and taking the requisite hard look under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Clarkstown's comprehensive plan is actually modeled as an environmental impact statement, one of the few in the state. The appropriate way for analyzing the potential impacts to the street network, school system, water resources, and natural environment shared by the residents of both our towns is to prepare an environmental impact statement. Those of you who know me know that I've been a longtime crusader against overdevelopment. I oppose the development of the Palisades Center Mall. I've advocated for stronger zoning laws and tougher penalties for violators, and I've championed the town's purchase of open space. I've taken these positions because I believe the residents of the town of Clarkstown cherish the single-family residential character of our town. The town of Ramapo should seriously analyze the impact on its neighbors when considering developments such as this one. Land use decisions should not and must not and cannot be made in a vacuum. This proposed development is simply too dense in relation to the surrounding single-family neighborhoods like those in Clarkstown, and I therefore implore you to reject these amendments. You should have already received, as you said, you received a copy of the Clarkstown Town Board's resolution objecting to this zone change, and as I noted, that was unanimous. So thank you for your time tonight, and I'm glad that you're not going to vote for this zone change tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Thanks. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Supervisor. At this time, I'd like to invite Chris Carey up. He's a county legislator, and I believe the majority leader of the county legislature, the minority leader of the county legislature.
I wish it was majority.
I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for giving me the time. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Carey. I am the legislator for District 9. I live in Bardonia, but I represent approximately 400 homes in Ramapo, and not right next to this location, but as my former colleague George and Shirley, when I was on the planning board, said, you don't have to be right next to it to be impacted. So I'm also a member, I'm a trustee of the Rockland County Municipal Planning Federation. That group, and actually George Holman is the president of that. That group comes together to share planning ideas, zoning ideas, and that's the place where issues like this, I think, should be worked out, and not when it comes to a project this late in the game. And I do respect Supervisor St. Lawrence saying that no decision is going to be made tonight, but this project's pretty far down the road, and I'm glad to see all the people out here tonight to get their point across. I'm also, as I said, a former planning board member in Clarkstown, and I was part of the special board that developed the comprehensive plan for Clarkstown. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the details. What my district, while it doesn't touch this project directly, decisions made here in Ramapo do have impacts in Clarkstown and the surrounding areas. It has to be taken into consideration, and what's right for Ramapo may not be what's right for Clarkstown and Rockland as a whole. I just want to add my voice to that tonight, and I strongly oppose this as designed, and I strongly oppose the amendment of the comprehensive plan. And the best way to summarize this is my former the chairman of the planning board in Clarkstown, succinctly put it: the proposed development of this land at a density of 12 units per acre of multifamily would result in overdevelopment, be out of character with the surrounding area, and have the potential to adversely impact the street network, school system, water resources, and natural environment, all shared with the residents in the town of Clarkstown. That, in a nutshell, speaks volumes about this project and why that we need to strongly oppose this going forward. And I hope the board is listening and gives strong consideration to not move forward with the project as designed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. I'm going to take the personal privilege of asking Margaret to come up and speak. I didn't see her name on the left. I was looking through. I didn't see her name here. It is in here? Okay. So we'll let you come up and speak, and then we'll go through the list. The next would be Mr. Robert Romanowski.
Okay, my name is Margaret Comer, and I live in 11 Forest Brook Road in Nanuet. I am against the opening of the borders between Clarkstown and Ramapo to accommodate Monsey Lumber's 40 single homes. It would ruin our quality of life, which we have built up, by working with the town of Clarkstown, by changing our mailing address to benefit the community, worked for 10 years to find the right area for our community centre, which is well used. Built our firehouse with quicker response, built up the Pascat Brook after being flooded with 7 feet of water through my home from the brook. This extra water would overflow the brook into my property, as I am the lowest point downstream. This is not a good thing. This is the 4th time that we have tried to build, that you have tried to build and open up the road. Honestly, I don't know what to say to make this any clearer. We don't want this. How many times do you have to hear this before you find a new location? This is my home, not yours. You go home you go home afterwards to your home, but mine would be forever changed. At the end of the day, I live there, and this will not only affect me, but my neighbors too. I asked the fine members of the town board, how would you feel if your neighborhood was being ripped apart? Could you stand it? I've lived at my residence for over 32 years. I have seen it change and grow, and I know this is a mistake. Please don't let it happen, and please find another location. I could go on all night about this being wrong, but I only have so long to speak. So please, hear my plea. I have been in Rockland for 32 years. I am an outstanding citizen and a senior citizen. And I care deeply for my neighborhood. Please, again, don't let this pass, for I will be the one dealing with the consequences. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Margaret. And Margaret, I did find your sheet here, and we'll get that. All of these will go to the clerk, and we'll for future meetings as well. Mr. Romanowski.
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Monsey. When you consider this downzoning, one thing that you're going to have to take into consideration is the effect that this is going to have on the East Ramapo School District. The East Ramapo School District now has to contend with a problem because of the large number of private school students in the district. It's something unique to East Ramapo. What happens is that since there are a large number of private school students in the East Ramapo School District, East Ramapo is considered to be a very wealthy school district, and it really affects the amount of state aid that the East Ramapo School District receives. And any more private school students being added to the mix will make it much more difficult and harder for the East Ramapo School District because of the reduction in the amount of state funding that they will receive. Another thing about this here proposal, the developers know the zoning of a property when they purchase it. Before they purchase it, they're very well aware of the zoning of the property. If the zoning does not match their needs, then they should not purchase it. It doesn't match their needs, don't purchase the property, don't purchase it first, then go to the town board and ask for a zone change so that your profits can be maximized by putting in what you want to put there. In 2004, the town of Ramapo created its current comprehensive plan. When that was created, the residents were led to believe, as the Supervisor St. Lawrence, you had said, this is the best comprehensive plan for the town of Ramapo because it concentrates the highest density of housing in the inner Monsey area where it is most needed. And it gets less dense as you get towards the outer fringes of the town. This proposal doesn't seem to fit into that comprehensive plan that was proposed and adopted in 2004. What this really is more of a spot down zoning, and it should be opposed because of this higher density. The last thing I want you to take effect, you said that the traffic will have no effect, no effects in traffic or anything, but there's what's called a cumulative effect. Each project that you approve creates what's known as a cumulative effect, and you have to take this effect into consideration because you add one, another, and another, and things just get more and more dense, more traffic. So I want you to take these into consideration, and really, your final decision is that this project should be opposed because of the high density that it will put in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. The next speaker is Barbara Avinger. And then after that will be Robert Kirkula.
Thanks
Good
to
evening.
the council, the board, for allowing me to speak. My name is Barbara Avinger. I live at 42 Springbrook Road, and I have been living there since 1983. And Margaret and my husband, we have always had an issue of drainage on our street as well as into her home. We had a lot of write-ups about the environmental impact of the O&R easement and also the brook. And every storm, we've always had a problem. And with the addition of more homes on our neighborhood, I think that that impact is going to be huge. I don't think we can sustain any more drainage problems on our street. They haven't really repaired what's there, what's been going on ever since I moved onto Springbrook Road. Excuse me.
Take your time.
And as far as they said, no parking on Springbrook. They have already taken away our parking, sort of, on Springbrook because of there's only one side where you can park on Springbrook, one side of the street. And if you have visitors, where are they going to park? In your yard? There's and people coming through, they see your side of the street, they come, they park there, they don't belong, some of them. And, if parking is already an issue for people that's like up above Springbrook, then, what is it going to be when they open it up? It's going to be a lot of people that none of us know on our street. And our street is a dead-end street. And I don't think we need that either. And as far as the environmental, we have trees. We have a bird sanctuary that's up on, I think it's Forest Brook. And animals, we still have deer, believe it or not. They come through in the morning. Does that mean that's going to take away from our living that we have always enjoyed, you know, being on Springbrook, that we're not going to have the privacy anymore? The deer are not going to come anymore because it's traffic coming through our street. And with 40 more homes or people that's going to be coming through that area, people are going to be taking shortcuts. They're going to have, you know, we're going to have lots of increased traffic going through to get from point A to point B. And that means that where are our kids going to play? I mean, you know, they can't ride their bikes where there's more traffic. So I think the impact will be very great. And if they're already going to take away our parking, and the drainage is going to be a problem, and our livelihood is going to be affected through all of this. And I think it's a wrong thing to do. I don't think no one on Springbrook, Forest Brook would like that to happen to their home that they've lived in for, you know, a long time. I thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Robert Kirkula, and then it will be Anna Jacobs. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening. Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, Town Board. Welcome, members of Ramapo and Clarkstown. I am a former resident of Ramapo, by the way.
State your name and address for the record.
Sure, Mr. Sampson. It's Robert Kirkella, Ward Kirkella, Kurkela. I used to...
I was close.
That's okay. I used to live in Ramapo. I bought a house in Chestnut Ridge in 1995. I was looking forward to raising my children here. And things started to change. I lived at 3 Allen Drive by Margat's Elementary School. I used to walk over and vote and look at the pictures in the classes, of the graduating classes. I saw color change, and I loved it. My wife grew up in Brooklyn. I wanted to raise my kids in East Ramapo. My first daughter was born Halloween 2001. She just had her bat mitzvah. And 2003, we decided to move to New City. Things were taking a turn, and we could see what was happening. So, as a former resident of Ramapo and a current resident of New City, Clarkstown, I'm going to show everybody here tonight a development that's going up right now that's having a direct impact on Clarkstown and what I feel this development could potentially do to us. It's called Estates at Sky Ridge. It's on Buena Vista Road, which is in New City. 2 years ago, you may remember Lake Lucille in New City was polluted and the DEC came in. And what happened was the town of Clarkstown was asked to permit a wire or wires to be installed from a utility pole on Buena Vista Road for electric cable and telephone. July 12, 2012, this request was recommended for denial by the town of Clarkstown Environmental Control for one reason, multiple actually. Utility service for this project was an oversight on the developer's part. In addition, Buena Vista is designated a historic road. The bottom line is, this development wasn't looking good. On April 2nd, 2014, the Ramapo Town Board sent to the Clarkstown Planning Board something. The Clarkstown Planning Board issued a letter to the town of Ramapo stating that the proposed development will result in the overutilization of the site. Potential adverse traffic, visual, sewer, water, energy, and noise impacts could result from changing 3 single-family residential lots to a school and dormitory that will house 85 students. The planning board questions whether the impacts of such a change were considered in the original subdivision that treated these lots and all of the other lots that can undergo similar changes. I did a little research. As we speak, the construction of the Yeshiva of Ramapo is occurring in 3 upper lots of Sky Ridge Estates. The Clarkstown Planning Board said not to build them. Up they go. We have a 16,800 square foot yeshiva and a 15,300 square foot dormitory with 11 parking places between them. This is the map of the estates. There's the one that's up by the Palisades. There's an aerial that this guy Ross took of that one building. That's what it looks like in the middle of a residential area. Let's see. There it is again. And lastly, to find how this could have possibly happened and Clarkstown was not aware of it, we pulled up the Town of Ramapo Planning Board agenda from May 7th, 2013. If you go to the last page of the agenda under miscellaneous, Sky Ridge subdivision, revised subdivision approval of lots 4 and 5. That's how we got our yeshiva in dormitory now. And by the way, if you drive over to Buena Vista Drive right now, and if you go over the little bridge into Sky Estates, stop, walk over, look in the water, and you will see the water is oily, okay? They've already been cited 2 years ago, if you remember this. So I'm highly recommending that this development does not go up because of the one that's destroying our beautiful, beautiful town of Clarkstown now. We will not turn into what they've become.
Thank you, Robert. Okay. Anna Jacobs. And then Donna Dragas.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't have a prepared statement, but as somebody who actually lives in the area, I thought I could add a few points to the overall discussion. First and foremost, regarding traffic study. It's all well and good for an expert.
Would you state your address, please?
I'm sorry. I live at 99 Union Road in one of the apartment complexes on that road. And so I've gotten to see what the traffic is like every morning, every evening, sometimes in between. And so for somebody who doesn't live in the area, 2% more traffic doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're actually trying to get to work in the morning, I can tell you we cannot handle even 1% more traffic. We can't handle 0.5% more traffic in the area. And if you don't believe me, and hopefully there will be lots of time to fully consider this proposal before making a decision, but I would invite you to come by at 9 a.m. in the morning, actually perhaps 8:30 to 9 a.m. in the morning on, say, a Wednesday, like today, and just see what it's like, see how many cars are honking, see the traffic jams, and consider whether the area can actually handle more traffic. As to the realistically what would happen if you have 200 additional units, it's not just about rush hour, it's about when additional people come to the area, businesses come to serve those people. I've lived on Union Road for 7 years, and during that time, we've seen Hatzaha Grocery, we've seen Refuah Health Center, we've seen a lot of businesses come in to service the growing community, and growing is good, but if it's done in a smart way, if it's done in a way that considers the community's needs. And I have some concerns that this development is just not well considered and not doing that. I also have some concerns about the fact that in the past there has been a lot of downzoning, and I've lived in this county practically my entire life, and the community has changed a lot in terms of, it used to be you came here, you saw a lot of trees, you saw a lot of single-family homes, and now sometimes you'll have a development right in the middle of a residential neighborhood where it just doesn't belong. This really isn't that. I live in the area, so I know we have a lot of apartment complexes. But I do think that this will create a lot of additional problems, not just for Clarkstown. And they have some very valid concerns, but for residents who already live here, such as myself. I live this every single day, and this would definitely have an impact. I don't know if we would be able to get to work in the morning in a timely manner. I don't know if we would have to pay more insurance rates due to more accidents that generally happen when you have a lot more people and a lot more cars. Union Road is just 2 lanes, people going this way, people going that way. It's just, it's insane, and Pascack Road is right there. So I get to see that day in, day out, and you can see it for yourself if you come by. Second, I currently live in an apartment. I would like to stop renting and start owning. And in this area, you really can't get a house for less than $300,000, and even that is on the very low end. So people who, I grew up here, I want to live here my whole life. And so right now I have a choice. I can either rent or I have to move somewhere else. And so I'm looking. I'm trying to find something that better suits my needs. And every time a development comes up in this area, it has 4 to 6 bedrooms. And let's think about who that serves. Does that serve people who grew up here and are trying to find a place of their own that's affordable? And I think everyone needs a place to live. And when you consider whether or not to approve a property like this, let's consider whether or not it serves the needs of the people already living here. In the past, what's happened is that these developments go up, investors come in and they buy these homes, and then they sell them to people who live outside of this county, or they rent to people from outside of this county. And we have enough needs here. Let's make sure that when downzoning happens, it happens for a very good reason in a way that serves the people already living here. 4 to 6 bedrooms, what about 1 or 2 bedroom homes? What about homes that are further spaced apart? When we build, let's do it in a smart way. We have, I live on Union, so right next door, we have a building where none of those units were advertised in the Journal News or on television. And when I called the builder, they said, "Oh, we're not looking right now." The homes weren't even built yet, weren't even fully built yet, and somehow they were already sold out. On Bluefield. Bluefield is a road of essentially townhomes, I think, 4 to 6 bedroom homes. None of those homes were advertised, or people were not given the opportunity to buy those homes outside of a particular community. And yes, everyone needs somewhere to live, but in the last 5-6 years that I've been just looking around and seeing what's available, 1 or 2 bedroom condos are not being built. The only way to get one right now is to buy one that was built in the 70s or the 80s. And so let's talk about building homes that serve everyone. Let's not have this complex built and then a year from now see just one homogeneous group living there. We have an incredibly diverse group of people living in Spring Valley and in Ramapo. We have people of all races, all religions, and it's time to start thinking about serving everyone and not just serving one group's needs. And I really do not want to have to move out because I don't have any options. I love this town, I love this county. I think we're a really kind of unique county, and let's not just turn Ramapo into one homogeneous group. We're better than that. We need to be better than that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Okay, Donna, and then that will be Beatrice Burgitz.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Donna Dragas. I'm a 21-year resident of Clarkstown, and I wasn't preparing to speak, so
take your time.
Yes. I just wanted to let you know that in the last 15 years, I've been very active with Keep Rockland Beautiful, and specifically on the Pascack Brook. I became involved when I live about 5 streets south of Old Nyack Turnpike, and across Pascack Road from me is the 100-year plain that is owned by Rockland County, and the water is dealt with and goes down to New Jersey where it's drinking water. It goes into their reservoir. After Hurricane Floyd, when the dam broke up at Lake Hyunga, all the water came downstream and it landed in that 100-year plain. When the water receded, all the trash stayed behind. I found this after I went walking through the woods to explore and found all this trash. I've been the last 15 years cleaning up the trash that's there and that comes down every season. Not once a year, 4 seasons we go in and we clean up the trash. This past spring, with the help of some of my neighbors, I pulled out personally 150 balls, ranging from golf balls up to basketballs, out of the brook in one cleanup. The 100-year plain, which is only supposed to flood once every 100 years, has flooded at least 3 times in the last 15 years. Because of the development that's going on and all the blacktop that's going in, there's nowhere for the water to seep and remain. Another point that I'd like to bring up is that I tried to show a video, which I'd be glad to show anyone, of what the Pascack Brook looks like right now. That
If you want to email it to us, we can put it in the record as well.
Sure, I'd love to do that.
Okay, we'll take your email.
And your water expert wasn't interested in seeing it, so I'll be glad to let you put it on your website so he can take a look at it. Since he's reviewed the whole Pascack Brook, he didn't seem to mention all the trash that's there. The other point I would like to bring up is the fact that I live a mile from where I have my business. My business is right next to the Pascack Community Center. It takes me at rush hour sometimes 4 to 5 traffic lights to get through the tunnel. You can't tell me that 300 more cars is not going to have an impact on that area. It's always congested by the Spring Valley Marketplace. You can't get through there during the holiday season. And I have a question for the gentleman who said that the percentage of Ramapo that has multifamily housing is only 35% nationally. I would like to know what percentage it is in Ramapo right now. I bet it beats the national average. I think most of my other concerns were already addressed by the other speakers. We know there's high-density housing in the area, but it's not low-income housing. It's middle-income housing. People who live in the community are happy to. I pay $20,000 in taxes a year. I have a single-family home that I bought. It's my dream home. It's my family home. I want to remain here and raise my grandchildren here. My children right now can't afford to live in my neighborhood. Yet everybody that's coming up from other areas wants their children to live right next door to them. Yes, it's my tax dollars that are affording them that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Donna?
Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Beatrice?
Good evening. My name is Beatrice Burgess. I'm at 25 Westwood Avenue in Westwood, New Jersey. I work for the firm Burgess Associates, which is a planning and landscape architecture and design firm, and we represent the borough of Upper Saddle River. I only first found out about this application yesterday, so I will ask for a little bit of patience because I needed to familiarize myself very quickly as to how your community works and how Rockland in particular works in terms of development. The reason why I'm here is because Upper Saddle River is very concerned about any developments that may impact downstream. We have had issues where we've had raw sewage flow up on our roads, and we have taken different municipalities to suit, and we've recently won a $750,000 lawsuit for the damage that has been done to our community. As I said, I'm really only here to observe, although I do have several questions. I can appreciate what the board here is doing. I myself am a former council member from Edgewater, New Jersey, and I have seen firsthand the impacts of rampant overdevelopment and how they need to be considered very, very carefully by all members of the boards as well as the public. Like I said, I am really here to ask a couple of questions, if that's okay. Some of them are for the board, some of them are for the developer, and some of them are for the experts. I know that the master plan, the last master plan was done in 2004. Is there any time frame within which you need to do or provide a re-examination or come up with a new master plan? In New Jersey, it's 10 years.
There's no legal requirement as to the time period to update a comprehensive plan.
There is none.
No.
So the last comprehensive master plan was 2004, and there was no re-ex done since then, or no amendment done since then.
No, there have been amendments, but
There
there's
have
been
been.
no comprehensive re-looking at the master plan.
Okay. Several things were mentioned at the beginning of the hearing, and I wasn't quite sure if they included specific studies or surveys that were given to the board together with this application. If that is the case, could you please tell me what those studies and surveys were attached to this application?
Well, the application's a public record. I would suggest you speak to the town's planning consultant, Mr. Lang, and I'm sure he would provide you with an update as to where we are at this point in time, what studies the applicant has provided, and what his office has done, and hopefully that would be update you as to where we are and what studies are there.
Could I perhaps then ask the developer of the Monsey lumber? The attorney maybe would like to comment as to what studies or surveys were provided to put on the public record?
This is a public hearing, ma'am. I don't know if it's different in New Jersey, but in New York, it's a public hearing. Yes, you can say what you have to say, and then there'll be responses to that by the appropriate people at the appropriate time.
Okay, and asking what studies have been submitted is not appropriate?
It is. Well, I think our town council just told you could ask the John Lang from Frederick P. Clark. He's right over there. I'll point him out to you, and he can tell you whatever studies.
So at this time, the board cannot answer that question?
Well, the purpose of the hearing is for you to provide testimony whether you're in favor or opposed to the proposal, and presumably you have researched it before you made comments. You indicated you recently got on board, which is fine, and we suggest that you look at what's been submitted. It's all public record, and I, again, suggested that perhaps you should speak to Mr. Lang, who's present, who's the town's planning consultant that's reviewing the materials that have been submitted by the applicant and some materials that his office has prepared. And perhaps when we come back next time, you will have prepared yourself, and maybe you can provide testimony that's relevant for the board's consideration.
I'm fairly confident that the board can be prepared in answering the question whether you have studies or not.
Hold on. No. If you're going to speak from the audience, then you're going to have to leave, okay? That's not the way it works.
Okay, let me go on with my questions.
I will tell you that speaking here tonight in no way would prohibit you from extending your remarks and coming back and speaking to us at another time. And our planner, John Lang, John, will you raise your hand so she can see who you are? He'll be glad to speak with you and answer any questions that you may have in order to facilitate you being able to get whatever documents have been submitted, okay?
And just for clarification, we represent about 40 municipalities, including municipalities in New York. So
Okay,
our firm
great.
does have familiarity as to what we could expect from a board.
Okay.
So can anybody answer if there's been a water capacity study done?
I'm going to repeat this again. This is not a question and answer. It's a public hearing where you ask the questions that you may have, the concerns you may have, state your concerns, and then they'll be answered by the appropriate people that should answer that.
Okay, can I ask
All
the
right.
engineer a question? Is the engineer still here? Drainage? No?
Mr. Supervisor, on behalf of the applicant, at the conclusion of the hearing, we will respond in writing to every issue that has been raised. You indicated that we're going to be here on a number of occasions, and everything that's raised by the public will be responded to.
So that I
Okay,
can
thank
raise
you.
my questions and you can take note?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay. So, water capacity study or survey, if there has been one done, done and provided. Sewer capacity. Has there been a study done for the property's adjacency to wetlands? What are the soil types on this property? Does anybody have any answers here? No?
Ma'am, ma'am, you can ask your questions. These are standard things that are done in every report, what you've just asked. Sewer capacity, there has to be sewer capacity, there has to be a water
just wanna know what
capacity,
is done.
and all, that's how it's done.
Well, since we don't know what the soil type is, I guess we cannot answer whether the soil can accommodate this type of development. I would like to know that as well.
Okay.
In my 2.5 hours to prepare, I did look at what they are, and if you don't have it, I'm happy to tell you. You have the RA, Ripplewam Sandy Loam, and part of it. And I didn't have the block and lot, so this is approximate, I admit. And the other is the WED, Weathersfield Gravelly Silt Loam, 15 to 25% slope. Hopefully that'll help expedite your answer. No, it's not. No, I did not say I didn't have the report. I'm asking to get things on the record, okay? I'm asking to get things on the record.
I thought you said that you didn't have information and couldn't find, and now you're reading from the very report that you said you don't have.
I'm not. I'm reading from my very own printouts from my office.
Page 10, Weathersfield Gravelly Silt Loam.
Oh, so it was done.
25%
Okay.
slope. Is that what you just read?
This is from National Resources Conservation Service, Web Soil Survey, National Cooperative Soil Survey. Wonderful. Okay. When can the State Environmental Quality Review be expected? Typically in an application. When does the board expect that?
You can't do that until the hearing is done.
I can't do what?
That's why we're here. We're having a hearing. You can't conclude a report while the hearing is open. That's prohibited.
CEQOR should happen at the earliest stages of an application so the board can be informed as best as possible in order to enable a decision.
This is secret, ma'am.
Has there a study been done or mapping been done for proximity to a floodplain? Can you give me approximate bedroom counts? I know somebody mentioned, I think Yes, I know I heard it from the public, but I would really like to hear it from either the board or the actual developer. Can you tell me what the bed count is? Bedroom count?
I'm not going to. Listen, you're looking for some drama and confrontation.
No.
Respectfully,
I think all of the members in the public here would love to hear these answers.
The town council here too, not just in Edgewater. I mean, let's keep to the facts. Everything is in the record. There's no reason for you to cast aspersions upon anybody.
I'm sorry you're feeling so defensive, sir. I don't know what it is in your personal history that has made you react this way.
Ma'am, you're good. You can speak to the board, And you
Okay.
can ask these questions,
Perfect.
but this is not a question and answer. This is not for you to go back and forth with the applicant. You can say whatever you have to say. It will be put into the record. Any questions you have will be answered and addressed.
Could something be built on this property that conforms with the current zoning? The testimony that we heard, and I think this is safe territory, the testimony that we heard from the experts, this is all, they testified on what is in this particular report, is that right? They're testifying from the report?
If you haven't reviewed the petitions, you haven't reviewed the seeker process that's done thus far, you haven't reviewed the consultants' reports, why should we engage in this dialogue?
Because
Please
it's your
prepare.
job.
It's all on the record. Please review what you're supposed to review and come back and address the board.
You know, I haven't heard you speak that way to anybody else here.
Well, quite frankly, ma'am, people are coming up with asking their concerns.
Statements. And what are the questions for then, if not for answers?
Go ahead. Ask your questions. Go ahead.
Again, I am simply here to observe. I only had 2 hours to get very, very basic information together. I've actually, I will admit, never been to Ramapo, and I haven't seen much because I came here in the dark. I'll be delighted to visit again and visit the site. The only thing I will then leave you with, since you're not answering my questions, and it would seem that all testimony here is basically net opinion, is that the attorney, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. The attorney started out by saying, bringing up this report as to how things have changed from 2006 to 2014. Our firm has been in existence since 1988. We have gone through several recessions. We have represented everything from a deck to a 2-lot subdivision to the LG headquarters in Englewood Cliffs. We have seen it all. We've represented developers, and we've represented residents like you. And, of course, we represent municipalities. The thing about planning is that it's a balance of competing interests. And what I advise all of my boards is that you cannot plan for trends. We heard that the trend now is that multifamily is in vogue. Planning is about the future. Planning is about determining what is best and what is the best outcome for the future of your community and what the impacts are of what you do today on tomorrow. I very, very much look forward to coming back to your next hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to that. Dick Cohen from New City.
I'm a resident of Rockland County for 44 years.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Dick Cohn. I am from New City, New York.
Any place in particular?
Yeah, Rowley Drive, 12 Rowley Drive, New
Thank you.
City. I'm in the county for 44 years, and I loved every minute of it. We moved here to raise our family, and we also looked at other areas. And if we could now look back, and I'm telling you from my experiences, and a lot of you probably have similar experiences, is that Rockland has pretty much it's changed a lot, but luckily hasn't changed as much as other areas that we could have moved to, like Yonkers, like out on the island. If any of you people, I'm sure a lot of you have traveled through these areas, and I don't know if you like what you see. They have single-family homes, congested, high traffic, all kinds of problems. In Rockland County, the traffic problems we could experience, you're all experiencing them now, and a lot of them could have been avoided due to poor planning. We now have on Middletown Road and Route 59 intersections where there's 24 lanes of traffic trying to make left turns, right turns with lights and directions. So we're living in a world today, due to our own fault, of being channelized into conforming. Now, a lot of the beauty of the county, which was here, and a lot of you, one of the ladies spoke about this before, is the wildlife has completely almost disappeared. And that was enjoyable to see, animals living in proximity to people in their homes. We all have space problems, and we also should realize that a drawer sometimes is full. You can't keep putting stuff in a drawer without breaking it, and eventually it doesn't work at all. And I think a lot of the problems that we are living with today were all well-meaning to help do something for the benefit, but like one of the last ladies spoke here, these comprehensive planning, the planning that goes on may solve a small problem, but on a comprehensive basis doesn't solve the larger problem, which we all live in. And the other thing one of the people mentioned here about this planned development is that all the number of playgrounds and things like that. But I think the American dream, as I see it, and I think most of you do also, is to own their own home, no matter how small it may be, but it's theirs. It's not to qualify to get into a community that's been organized by some department, local or federal, and qualify to join. That's not what America's all about. This country wasn't based upon people joining community development associations. It was individualism that made this country great. And if we're going to remain great and remain strong, we have to go back to those basics. I think also it's important that something like this will lead to others. And like in Yonkers, for instance, Central Avenue, I remember as a kid, it was all very nice residential, rural areas. At first they went with the duplex, the attached houses went to duplex, went to high-rise buildings. Now you try to go on Central Avenue, and you see the mess they have there, and the cost. And the few people that remain in homes down there are surrounded by high-rises, and the quality of life is terrible. I'm not against providing homes, living place for people, but I think that the public, the people that are here now, have a right, and if this is that important, it should be put on the ballot. If people, and a referendum, people vote if they want this. Of course, you could make anything work. Now, we were talking about drainage. The engineer was mentioning about all the drainage requirements have been met. Well, if you're talking about, we're talking about zero runoff. We're talking about retention. You could build retention basins. But do you know some of the problems with retention basins? Major one is who's going to maintain them. Number two, there's a lot of dangers in retention basins. When they fill up, if they're not protected, small children could fall into them and drown. In the wintertime, when they get clogged or frozen from the ice, they don't drain. So what happens? They overflow, they get onto the land, they get onto the roads, they could cause accidents. Also, we worry about mosquitoes. They're very big areas for mosquito, and also rats. Rats love to live in detention basins and build families there. And the fluctuating of the water up and down in these basins does cause erosion and flooding and sliding of the embankments, if not built and maintained properly. So you will have sinkholes, undermining, and sometimes flooding of adjacent buildings next to these retention basins. So in summary, I don't think we should look at downzoning and increasing. Rockland is beautiful. Let's fill it up with homes that were on the master plan. And as one of the other people said before me, I just repeat this, is that all these pieces fit together, and anything you do downstream affects people upstream. I know, as Margaret Comer was talking before, and I happened to be in her house during one of the flooding, and I could testify here that she had 7 feet of water in her house, a sewer broke, and the sewage, it was a horrible thing to see. Sewage was laying up against her walls, stuck to the walls. And her late husband, Jim Comer, his soul rest in peace, he was a World War II veteran and a great man. He completely cleaned that all out and rebuilt everything himself. So these are the dangers. And I don't think we got to open up that door. I think we should provide a 2-bedroom house that this woman is looking for on the land that's been appropriated, and not look to changing the way of life that most people agree that they don't want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Arlen Yakov, 12 Springbrook Road. Arlen? And then next will be William from Springbrook Road, 63 Springbrook.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Members of the council, my wife and I have been residents of Springbrook Road from its very inception. We moved in August of 1973, about 2 years after the creation of Hillcrest, of the Forest Brook Estates, which was then known as Hillcroft. And I was also, as a result of that, the vice president of the Forest Brook Estates Homeowners Association in its early years. During that period of time, all of the problems that have been discussed, having to do with drainage, developed in probably the worst way imaginable. There were either 6 or 8 houses in the middle of Springbrook Road which were totally flooded out while the construction was still going on, with people, residents living in that area. In order to ameliorate the situation, it was necessary to cut a number of swales through the back of all the properties and take down trees so that the water could actually drain. I don't know whether or not the present developer is aware of it, but we are aware of the fact that there are numerous underground streams which do flow through it, and we had to make room for them to come through and go into the sewage system. That's the only way we had drainage at that area. Now, I happen to be at a higher end than most of the rest of Springbrook Road until you get to the area where they created the high ranches, which I think start at around 48 or 52 Springbrook Road. Springbrook Road starts with my property, which is 12 Springbrook Road, because there is no lower number, and across the street it starts at 17 Springbrook Road, and I believe it goes as high as either 68 or 69. So we're only talking about 50 houses on that entire stretch that goes maybe a third of a mile. The street itself is 29.5 feet wide at its widest point, and also its narrowest point. It is a very narrow street. There isn't even a line down the middle, so that if you had parking on each side of the road, you can probably get one car going through at a time and sort of angling through. You can't bring trucks through there, and one of the problems, if it's the intention of the builders to build in the area that's going up on Springbrook Road and using Springbrook Road as a means for construction vehicles, it's a virtual impossibility. They will also destroy this road in the process. You cannot get vehicles of that size through there in the normal course of the day if anybody who lives on Springbrook Road is going to actually either go in or try to get out. It's a physical impossibility. Now, since I was there, as I said, since 1973, I recall a time when there were no high ranches. At that time, all you had was a beautiful forest where you could go there in the middle of the night. 2 o'clock in the morning, you could go there, you would not meet anybody, and there was also no threat that anything untoward would happen. If you were allowed to make Springbrook Road, which is now a no outlet, or some people call it a dead end, we prefer no outlet. If it were allowed to continue up to Union Road, we would have people from other neighborhoods come through here, people who don't know us. Right now, if somebody drives into Springbrook Road, it's either somebody who lives there, or somebody who is visiting and knows people who live there, or somebody who went there accidentally and then comes right back out. That's what it comes down to. That's the nature of, and almost everybody on the street knows almost everybody else, which is kind of rare these days. If you put in multiple families, you're going to have people who don't know each other, and they certainly won't know anybody who has been living here for 40 years, or 30 years, or even 20 years. It will change the character. I do not want to get involved with any of the issues that any of the other people have mentioned, and I've tried to keep my remarks along those lines. In terms of the scope, as I said, I don't know at this point whether or not they intend to build by going through Springbrook Road and do it that way, or they're going to come through Ewing and Pascack. That would seem to make a lot more sense. There is a road, or what looks like a road, right where the old pool was, and frankly, the area has been a terrible eyesore for at least the last 25 years. If somebody came here and said, look, we want to put up 40 residential homes in an R15 district, which is what it is, I would say it's about time. That area should not look like that. If you go on Northbrook Road, which is a continuation of Pascack Road, you only have single-family homes going all the way up to Eckerson. There are no multifamily homes on Northbrook. If you go on to Pascack Road, which is a curved old road, I believe it was an Indian road, that's where the name Pascack comes from, you have single-family homes, including some very old ones which are made out of stone. And I mean, not just the fashion stone, and some of them are quite attractive. There are no multi-family homes on Pascack Road from Eckerson Road until it comes down to the point where it makes the bend and then continues onward. Now, where the White House was, yes, they did build certain things there, I remember the White House when it was there. I remember when it was being used by senior citizens before they built the houses, and there's now a fence, so you can't actually see what's behind that fence. And as I said, it would be nice if that area were improved. I don't think most people would object to that because that's part of the master plan. But I don't see how anybody can seriously expect to build if they're going to use Springbrook Road and somehow eliminate whatever little parking there is on that road. Right now, the parking on that road is only sanctioned on the even-numbered side, which happens to be on my side. Because I have 410 feet of sidewalk that goes all the way up to Forest Brook Road, theoretically you can park about somewhere between 20 and 30 cars.
For your big parties.
Well, which we don't have. But other people, our neighbors do park right alongside our property. They're not allowed to park on the other side. And one thing which wasn't mentioned is this. As far as the buses are concerned, the buses go through Forest Brook Road, except for the ones that stop at the juncture of Springbrook Road and Forest Brook Road, which is at the top of our property. And the residents drive up alongside my property, drop off their children so they can get on the buses. It ties up the area for about 15 or 20 minutes, but that's the only way you can do it. You cannot bring a bus down Springbrook Road because you can't turn around. How would that be? How would they deal with a situation like that? And to try to put in 210 additional units, if that's going to be the access way, I haven't heard any other access way mentioned, I don't believe it's a physical possibility to do that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. William? Right up, William.
Thank you, Supervisor. Members of the board. I think in our previous meeting, I made mention of the environment. Whether Rockland is thinking about the environment. Because when we call environment, we're not talking about buildings, but we're talking about the natural vegetations that we see. And I'm really shocked that we are still debating on this issue that we are totally rejecting this evening. This new development, one is on top of my house. And I love it. In the morning when I wake up, there are fresh air that comes out of it. That small parcel on the air wing, when the wind blows, when the lightning comes in, I live in that house. So I see what happens. And I see how that small parcel has saved my house and some other houses there. It stops all the lightnings. It stops all the, all the storms and the winds that blow in the community. And so this is what is making us to love the area in which we live. One thing that we don't want to see is that when this is developed, it's going to cause so many traffics in the area. Already we're having problems with school buses. My goodness, in the morning if you want to go to work and this school bus shows that red sign, you better have to wait for 15 minutes or 30 minutes before they go. And imagine if these two parcels will be developed. The whole place will be chaos. The whole places will be chaos. The proposed two parcels will create additional traffic and local residential streets within the towns of Clarkstown. In addition, the property is physically constrained with steep slopes, wetlands, and a high-tension overhead power line, the Pascat Brook. The Pascat Brook is a critical county environmental feature and source of flooding in the town of Clarkstown. This zoning change will have a direct negative impact on the residential of Clarkstown. And I believe that Clarkstown has a strict zoning laws that support our environment. So we don't need any change of zoning laws. I take this opportunity this moment to address it to supervisor and the board that we totally oppose the development in the area, and we object the development in the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William. Okay, we have 4 more speakers who've signed up, and maybe others who want to speak. Gail Moggio. And then Deb Seidman.
Board, my council people, and my neighbors.
Gail, I need an address.
10 Clark Drive. I don't want to go over some of the things that other people have said, but I want to say, no offense to the neighbors at Forest Brook, but when they started building that development, I'm living in my house 43 years, I then got water. So for you to do any more construction in that area, I will swim out. I can't take any more flooding. It's beyond what I can deal with anymore. The other thing is traffic. I live further down. I live between Forest Brook and Smith Road. I have to sit there sometimes 3-4 minutes to get out, and that's not rush hour. That's any time throughout the day. So to add more traffic, you're asking for problems. What about the children who are trying to go over to the Pascack Community Center? We have a traffic light there, but cars don't stop. They just keep going. They're whizzing by. They make Pascack Road like a freeway. Any more traffic, you will have more problems. The other thing is, I have a letter here from some of the neighbors that live right across the street from Forest Brook that have asked me to read this. And it says, these zone changes will direct negative impact on our residents in Clarkstown, specifically those of us who live on a near Springbrook Road and the surrounding area, which includes the town Pascack Community Center, would increase the traffic, the influx around our surrounding neighborhoods, and the environment and overdevelopment. Moreover, building multifamily resident homes that have 4 to 6 bedrooms limit the families that will be able to afford these houses, and discriminating against the families, preventing them from being able to purchase these homes. I ask you, as a resident, and I'm living in my house 43 years, to please reconsider this. Think of the other people in the neighborhood, not just of yourselves.
Thank you, Gail. Debbie Seidman, and then Layla, and then Bruce.
Hi, Mike. My name is Deborah Seidman Munitz, and thank you for having me here tonight. I live at 5 Rose Hill Road in Montebello. Before I come up and just talk about what I wanted to say tonight, one, I want to thank you for agreeing ahead of time to leave the public hearing open. I didn't hear you say specifically that you'll take written comments, but I assume that since it's going to be open, that you will be taking written comments?
We'll take written comments, and we will have another public hearing, at least another one more, to take oral comments as well.
Okay. And in reaction to the comments that our lady from Upper Saddle River brought up, I do want to raise one point. When you look at the New York Department of State, rules, you have technical Department of State publications on how to run public hearings. The purpose of bringing in experts to these meetings and planning for the experts at the meetings is so that the board would be in a position to ask questions and clarify things, which we would hope you would do. And obviously, if you guys don't, and the public has questions of these experts, it is actually permissible for the public to ask questions, and it's the responsibility of the board, of the chairman, to make sure it doesn't turn into a debate. And obviously asking specific questions is probably not meant to be turned into a debate. So I think you should encourage that. I know there are specific laws that are on the books regarding procedures for like site plan reviews and things of that nature with respect to public hearings. And also, people who come up from the public are allowed to ask, the experts, for answers, specific answers, not debates. I did manage to get a hold of some of the plans, and I'm here because I'm a resident of the town of Rampo, and I have, I think, a little bit more familiarity with amendments to comprehensive plans than some. I have one question, which can be answered later, which was, were there any other amendments to the comprehensive plan other than for the Patrick Farm? That could be answered later.
Okay.
There were a lot of documents. I had come in to do a FOIL. I was not able to get all the documents because it was today. And I believe I have all the documents that were collected for the board. And it was very noticeable to me that there was a lack of the narratives and the CDRC minute notes that were available in the planning department, which I thought had very, very interesting and constructive comments. I think it's very important, and I would ask that those CDRC notes from the Monsey Lumber be included, and I would ask the board to please review them. They're not that many, they're very short, but I think getting a first blush on the reaction from like our town planner, the DPW, and things of that, I think it's important. And they're not as positive as, some of the documents I think that were presented to the board. So I think that that's important. There are wetlands on the property. People have mentioned it. When you look at the large map for Monsey Lumber, they're not indicated anywhere. If you look at the map, the latest map for the smaller 171 North Pascack property, there are actually, some indications of these federal wetlands. Obviously, the Pascack Brook has riparian buffers, and it has these natural features designed to, protect the waterways. So I've highlighted in orange here these particular wetlands that extend off the property, and this area here is the part of the Monsey Lumber property where I see all of the detention ponds, the drainage features that are specifically put in place to handle the large development that's in place. Like we've heard before, I think it's important that the board take the responsibility to require proper final delineations signed off by the various agencies involved. We've gone through this path before, and I think it will save us all a lot of time to do that work and to force them onto the plans. I don't really need to say things, but the engineer involved has been involved in other projects which have led, like the ball field, to DEC problems. We've had a lot of problems with the Patrick Farm because we didn't visit this stuff up front, and now that the stuff is going through the agency review, I think a lot of interesting things are being uncovered, and I think it would have saved everyone a lot of time and money and agita if we had done the right thing up front. The comprehensive plan is overdue. It should definitely be revisited. It's time. And I'm not disagreeing that there is not more need for plan development and more higher density development in the town of Rampo. I would argue it's not here. I would argue it's not here specifically because this is an area that was left to be low density for a reason. It was left undeveloped for a long time for a reason. It's not as suitable for development, especially high density development, as other areas. It would have been developed by now. The fact is this particular developer has sat on a subdivision approval for years. I know that it was showing up at least all the way back in 2010's tax map, so I don't know all the details. I haven't had time. But obviously, they've had plenty of opportunity to develop this. And in reading through the notes, these new plans are actually rather recent. And the question is, why now? What changed? What's special? If you go ahead and look at this area without looking at the entirety of the town of Rampo and saying, look, we need more space, we need more development, The purpose of doing amendments to the comprehensive plan is to look at everything. The decision has to be a good decision for everyone. It can't be a good decision just for a developer or even the few people who might want to live in that specific development. It has to be something that, you've really looked at everyone's interests and you've identified it. And if this is the right property, let it come out of, a concerted effort to do the right thing and look at all of the properties. There's a lot of development that I think would really enhance the town of Ramapo and provide affordable housing and high-density housing and things that are more suitable for the people who need space. I don't believe it's here. So there's no needs analysis in the documentation I was able to find. Without all of these types of typical analyses, it still is spot zoning. I know that there was an effort made to say, well, let's not do it for this one developer. Let's do it for the two developers. Let's throw in a few more things. Let's look at this little area. It's still not enough. I know it's sort of an attempt to sort of address the spot zoning issue, but it really still does not address the legal requirements, for doing amendments and looking at things as a whole. So I think we need to take a step back and do a lot more analysis if you really want to consider this an amendment to the comprehensive plan. This documentation has a lot of images. When they're obtained under FOIL, I keep asking if you guys could scan things and ask people to submit them in PDF form. These kinds of things can be blown up and you can look at the details and appreciate the colors. Any document that is copied, right now, scanned or otherwise, is, any image, diagram, or whatever, is barely recognizable. It's really difficult to see what's going on. So I would ask that during this open public hearing process that you please ask whoever, did these documents to please submit PDFs, okay, online. Just ask the developer to do it, ask the town planner to do it. Just submit a nice PDF that somebody can go in and actually see what's going on. I did look, and I see notes, some notes say that there wasn't a water sewer capacity study done. There are comments saying that everything is fine, but with no backup. I didn't see any comments from the sewer department one way or another, and obviously we did have that $1 million problem that she alluded to earlier, the woman from Upper Saddle River. So we don't want to have another one of those issues. I didn't see any United Water documents or anything from the Department of Health with respect to water. I saw diagrams in the comprehensive plan amendment that don't even match the latest developer maps. So there seems to be some mismatch in terms of stuff that was considered by whoever was writing up that document, which is unsigned. It should be signed. We should know who's writing these documents. So I would say the next version of it that's updated for the purpose of answering questions should include the author. I think that's important. She asked earlier about the number of bedrooms. I had a similar conversation. Spacing of the buildings. Obviously, this is not a site plan review, but the problem with doing the comprehensive plans this way, in reaction to a site plan, is it sends a bad message. So instead of saying, what's our need? Where do we go? What are we trying to do? What's the right thing? By going in and saying, here's a specific site plan, and let's take a look at it, and let's consider this in the context of this specific development, you're suddenly thinking through all these site plan issues when it's really too premature. That being said, if you go into the planning process where someone has already gone that far down the road, like this woman had said earlier, there's this implicit and tacit, like if you guys sign off on this, there's this like tacit sort of approval that this is a great plan when mechanically, technically, engineering-wise, it may not be a great plan. And I think it's really problematic to be considering something specific. Either you're going to consider something specific, in which case it should be very specific. There should be bedroom counts. There should be building spaces. We should know the heights of these buildings. Are they 2 stories? Are they 3 stories? Is it the Knolls or is it, Butterfield? I think we need to know what the concept is. Like I said, I think it's time for the board to take the leadership on dealing with the comprehensive plan and getting all the communities involved. It was very divisive back in 2004. It led to a decade of divisiveness. And I think that people are tired of the divisiveness, okay? And I really believe that there is a very wide audience for seeing leadership come together, gather up the communities, get level-headed people, start to figure out some solutions. You can't have it be developer-driven. It has to be people-driven. It has to be resident-driven. You've got to look at it in its totality. You guys really can be part of the solution, and you should be, and we want you to be. Okay? Things are going to change, but it could take another decade. Right now, we're faced with this. I would say you have to go. Don't just override the county. Don't override Clarkstown. Don't override the residents who don't want this. Force there to be a better and more comprehensive view. And it's okay to say no now and then revisit it and allow them to come back in when you've come up with the right plan. And maybe the right plan for this is something between MR12 and R15. Maybe the right plan is, as it was in the comprehensive plan, R15 with clustered housing. You want to do a gimme and say, hey, I want a little incentive to get you to do the right things and move off these steep slopes and this brook and the wetlands. Okay, we'll give you a 10 or 20% uplift. It'll be a little cheaper for the developer to do. There could be things that you can do, even pilot or tax-wise or otherwise, to incentivize good development here. A lot of development where you leave trees, okay, is going to make a difference to the brook, which is already having very stressed, it's very polluted, it's identified as a problem area. We can't be doubling down on the pollution in that area. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Layla? Is Layla here? And then Bruce Levine.
My name is Loyla Vio. I live at 53 North Pascack Road. I actually live right in front of the community center that the other woman had spoke about. I live at the stoplight. I have young children there. The gentleman spoke about the traffic. There's been numerous occasions where I have a visually impaired child that the way the stoplight works, you press the light and then you can cross. It stays green until you press the light. My son goes to go across the street to the community center and he's almost hit by a car because you have people speeding through on Pascack Road, just blowing the light. So now we have a 210 unit development coming in. Only God knows how many people is going to be living in each apartment. So we're getting 400 more people into our neighborhood to drive through there. To how many more people are going to be blowing that light? How many times my husband had to go outside and help a child because someone is running the light and the child is scared, or trying to pull out of my own driveway. I can't eat on a regular day. That's without this development. I'm sitting in my driveway 3-4 minutes before I can even back out of my driveway to leave. And then I've been a resident of Clarkstown for 8 years, my husband 28 years. I moved here to try to give my children a better life, a better education. Unfortunately, they ended up in the East Ramapo School District. I'm just curious as how many of these units are going to have children moving in that are going to end up in the East Ramapo School District, which will mean how many, not everyone can afford private school, especially if you're paying $5,000 in taxes for school. I'm just curious if the gentleman that would like to make this go through, how they would feel if their children were in a classroom with 30 to 35 children in each class. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce, welcome.
All right, so I'm Bruce Levine, 9 Robin Hood Road, Montebello, New York, 10901. Secondly, I am speaking for myself. Okay, make sure there's no question about that. All right, so I don't want to speak a lot since I heard there's going to be more,
okay.
And obviously we have, but we're not going to debate tonight, right? Okay. Side joke. So there's going to be additional hearing, and I haven't had a chance to really review the documents to really analyze them properly. I want to speak, though, in certain kinds of terms, because I agree with everyone who says that if you're going to do a master plan amendment, then you need to look at everything. And the Patrick Farm is the only other one that I know that was done. There might have been others, but I can tell you it's my position, both personally and in that case as an attorney, that that master plan amendment did not consider all the possibilities, not remotely. Not remotely. It considered what was in front of them, not whether it's good for the town. The most important thing to me is this. As was said by a young woman quite cogently, someone buys this property knowing what the zoning is, right? And then they come in and they seek to have density increased. And basically, this is to enrich a developer. It's to enrich a developer. That's what it's about. The question for you is, what's the public interest? It's not your job to enrich a developer. It's your job to do what's in the public interest. So if but I want to be clear. The public interest is a consideration of all of the interests, and to figure out what we need in the entire town and how it would affect all of the surroundings, including in other towns. So I don't know the answer to that question. Okay? I'm not presuming to know it, especially for this particular lot. You who live there know it much better than me. Okay? But what I am saying is, what's the public interest? When you do a comprehensive master plan, I fully hope and expect that you would keep the promise that you made to me. Not, actually, it's quite a while ago when Elm Street was being considered. And you said, we are going to make sure that there is affordable housing throughout this town for every community with different housing styles and different housing needs. And that has not happened yet. The comprehensive plan should look at existing places in undeveloped areas and even places that might have developments and say that these may be appropriate areas for not crazy, giant, public housing projects, but affordable housing or mixed housing, where some of it's affordable and some isn't, and make that determination. You might find that this area was zoned with clustered, which makes sense to me because of the wires and the slopes, and there's some wetland on it, and I really haven't looked at it to give you a full answer on that, and I hope I will weigh in on that. But cluster developments is good. But you don't have to go with some pre-existing zone, right? You don't have to say, okay, well, we have an MR12 zone that says 4 to 6 bedrooms, for example, right? You can say, if you did a proper master plan review, you don't have to say yay or nay to a developer for what they want for their own pecuniary interest. You can say, wait a minute, what do we need that's in the public interest here? Right? In overall, and then in each particular place as a pattern of doing things that are really good for the town. You can create your own zone that says things like, and this is my primary issue with this proposal, if you're going to build any kind of multiple units in this town, you need to remember that the number of bedrooms is a determinant of the diversity of the people who are going to live there. There are people who need 1 bedrooms. There are people who need 2 bedrooms. There are people who need 3 bedrooms. There are people who need 4 bedrooms. There are people who need 5 bedrooms. And what should be happening when you approve multiple dwellings is that should be built into your zone, that there be mixed. Why can't we have integrated housing in this town that's supported and encouraged by you, the entire board? Why do we have to have separate types of housing? I believe that you can do this, but you need to do it by not getting locked in to the, the Procrustean bread. I'm using an old phrase I learned when I was in high school. Procrustean bed, where you're trying to fit this tall guy into this little teeny bed, And you got to, so how do you do it? You cut the feet off, and you cut the head off, and you cut the arms off, and that's how we do it. And then it fits, right? So, make the right zoning choice. Don't let someone else tell you what to do. If you think this is a parcel that should be changed, maybe you won't. But if you think that after you look at all the parcels in the town, then you have to ask yourself, what should we change it to? And how would it serve everyone? How would it serve the same kind of people who live in that area? The area in Clarkstown, which I never really grew up in as such, because I'm not born in Ramapo since I'm 4 years old, since 1960. That's a beautiful, beautiful old area that, at least from someone like me, I've not seen that area change in any kind of significant way. It's a beautiful old area in the 40 years that I've been driving through there. And, I've been driving, or being driven through it. And, I really think that that has to be part of your consideration also. But the way you consider, but first and really foremost, is to consider the needs of the entire town, the needs of every group in this town, whether it's ethnic groups or economic groups, however you want to define that, and whether it's affordable housing or not. If it's going to, I heard it said that this was going to be affordable. As you know as well as I do, what does that mean, right? It's still going to be, who is going to get that affordable housing? Those details have to be determined. You should be in charge of that, not the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
My name is Mike Parietti, 6 Book Rock Road, Suffolk, New York. A couple of things I would point out initially. First of all, the lawyer said that there's a trend of high density in that area. That's really not true. If you look at the maps, the density, there's some residential density nearby in Clarkstown and Ramapo. That's about 4 to 5 units per acre, not 12. There are some lots in Spring Valley that are very high density, but they're very small acreage, some under an acre. Okay, it does not compare to 28 acres at MR12, or 12 units per acre. There's also a number of other things. Sewer easements. There's sewer easements that go right through the property. The county sewer district has said that they will need to increase those easements from 10 to 20 feet to properly maintain the easement, and some of the buildings are actually planned to be within that easement. As been mentioned by other people, there are some environmentally sensitive areas designated by the EPA on the site, and those sites, you can't traverse those with sewer lines or anything else without getting a special permit from the federal government, and that doesn't seem to be taken into consideration in the plan. Most of the buildings do not meet the proper separation. They're too close. I think it's supposed to be 30 feet, and they're 25 feet. And the other thing is that even with this zone change, you're still going to need a multitude of variances. And so what's the point? The town's own planner said that this should be passed in such a way that no variances would be required. But you look at the plan that you've got, multiple variances are required. So there's no point in doing the down zone in the first. If it's not going to meet the needs of what you're trying to do, why would you even do the down zone if you're going to need multiple variances on top of that? And like Bruce Levine said, it's kind of strange. Some developer comes along and they want a down zone, so the town board just hops to, oh, we have a hearing, we have a down zone. You guys are in charge here. Certain developers shouldn't be able to show up and say, I need a down zone, let's get everybody together and have a down zone. I mean, it seems like the tail is wagging the dog here. And I think it does go to the fact that this is about certain favored developers getting what they want, and we know that we know that based on the floor plans of 4 to 6 apartments, that this is a community that will be developed primarily or exclusively for the ultra-Orthodox community, which is a pattern, a very marked pattern that we've seen in Ramapo. Just look at the Elm Street project, which was built by the town, the RLDC, and look at Parkview. These are developments that are strict. You go by there, they are exclusively for members of the ultra-Orthodox community, and no one else is allowed, and I'll say that, no one else is allowed to move into those areas. So what you're doing is you're developing segregated housing in the town of Ramapo. And this is obviously This is another one of those plans, and they said that there's a trend of high density in the area. That's really not true, as I said, but I can tell you one trend that we do have in Ramapo, and that is ethnic diversity. In that area, it's a very ethnically diverse area, and here you want to take a big piece of property and basically say that, okay, there's going to be no ethnic diversity in this development. It's only going to be for one community, and it's going to be segregated housing. And we know what this is all about, really. This is a part of a plan for the political takeover or domination of the town of Ramapo by the ultra-Orthodox community. And because I can assure you that if other developers showed up and wanted to build different kinds of housing on this plot, you wouldn't be having a hearing about a zone change. And whatever they asked for would be denied. Okay, but you ensure that it's well known that if developers from the ultra-Orthodox community want a piece of property and they want to get the zoning, they can get it. But nobody else is even, there's no point in them buying the piece of property because they know they're not going to get the zoning. They're going to be prevented because you know that if other types of zoning or housing is built in there, ethnic diversity will happen. And that doesn't help the vote count. Because this is not about the public, it's about your self-interest. You want to increase the block vote so that you can be repeatedly elected no matter what. And I think a good example of that is what happened with the ward vote. Remember that, Chris? You were afraid you were going to lose that one. So you played this little game where you put out a resolution saying everybody may get registered with the Board of Elections by September 23rd. And then the town attorney admitted in court, well, yeah, we didn't want people to know that they had to that they didn't have to be registered because we would have been overwhelmed at the polls with affidavit voters. So we didn't tell anybody. Okay, but it appears that certain segments of the community were told, and we had a whole bunch of unregistered voters, many of them yeshiva students, going to yeshivas in areas that were downzoned to accommodate them repeatedly in different parts of Ramapo. So it's about political subjugation. It's a long story that goes back millennia in history, where one group comes along and tries to subjugate or dominate another. Okay, and that's what we have going on here. And we know what's going on. Okay, we're not going to stand by and just let it happen. And frankly, Chris, this is a federal issue. Okay. And that's where it's going.
Thank you. Anybody else? Is there anybody else who would like to address us at this time? Speak. Come right up.
Hi, my name is Joe Simos. I'm the Director of Planning for the town of Clarkstown. I don't want to reiterate what's already been said, and I realize this isn't really a question and answer. I'm at 5 Beauregard Terrace in Congers, New York. I I think the town's position has been pretty well represented by Councilwoman Lasker and Councilman Homan. But I wanted to basically make 2 points. One is having to do with seeker, and one has having to do with comprehensive planning. As was mentioned, at the earliest point in the process is when you need to do the environmental review and provide that information to interested and involved agencies. The first step in this environmental process is the lead agency. We haven't received anything in terms of lead agency. At least we don't have any record of it. But I don't think there's any doubt that the town is interested in this. We're definitely getting involved in it. And I think we should have all of the materials sent to us, all of the environmental materials, all the analysis that was done on this project. And really the process to get that done is through an environmental impact statement. So the town board, the planning board of Clarkstown has recommended to your board that really a positive declaration would be appropriate for this type of development or this type of action. I think there's no doubt that there's a potential and adverse impact to traffic, drainage, schools, community character, wetlands, Pascack Brook, the steep slopes. There's quite a bit here that I believe would warrant that positive declaration and environmental impact statement, really to get all those materials out, get the comments that you need from all of the interested and involved agencies. And that is really just on the zone change, because on the amendment that you're talking about to your comprehensive plan, I really think it's an indicator. It's one thing to amend a comprehensive plan because you maybe missed a goal or an objective when you did it the first time. Our comprehensive plan, the original, was from the 1960s. Every 10 years, we updated it, and we updated it. We updated it up until 2000. And then when 2009, we decided we needed to start with a new one. And even though by state law, every new one is an update, we started over. It was a new comprehensive plan. And we, as was mentioned, modeled it as an environmental impact statement. So I encourage the town of Ramapo to look at that. Look at your comprehensive plan, really look at it as an environmental impact statement. It hasn't been done a lot in the state, but it's a great way to look at all of the land use throughout your town, look at it with a fresh perspective, because if you have amendments like this and you're really considering amendments like this, it's an indicator that maybe you really need a new plan and you really need a fresh look. You need the workshops and the public involvement so that you really are representing the goals and objectives of your town.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Anyone else? We come right up.
I really had no intention to speak tonight. My name is Marcia Greenberg. I live at 7 Ruston Lane for the last 35 years. Ruston Lane, or Ruston Estates, is across from Forest Brook and is directly across the road on Pascack Road from the proposed development. Over the years, I have been involved with East Ramapo School Board meetings and have been president for East Ramapo PTA. My children have gone through the schools. I have seen changes in the school system. I have seen changes in a once very proud district to become some that people are just running away from. Even though the children that might be attending living in this development will not be attending East Ramapo School District, all of us will be paying for the busing that they are entitled to. This will be another financial drain on people like myself who live in the town of Clarkstown, but pays taxes to East Ramapo School District. I am in a townhouse development. We are multifamily. We are 25 homes on approximately 6 acres of land. When there is multifamily development in Clarkstown, it seems that they are limited to bedrooms of 2.5 to 3 bedrooms. I was also involved with the Timberline or Hamlets development in Clarkstown, so I'm very well aware of what the restrictions have been over the years. I am very concerned about the drainage. because there will be many, many more houses in the area floating down on our little 25-home development. All the houses surrounding us are one-family, single-family developments. The tunnel is a major concern to me. That one-lane tunnel was probably built sometime in the 1800s. They have finally put a light in front of the tunnel, so if you're making a left turn into Pascack Road, you can see the tunnel entrance at night. On our street alone, you cannot make a left turn onto Pascack Road unless it's nighttime, when you see cars coming towards you. There has been many accidents, unfortunately, one fatality, just trying to make a left turn out of our development. Now add 240 homes to this community. We're looking at a site plan. I am very curious about the about the release. What are these buildings going to look like? Are they going to be 4 stories tall? Are they going to be 8 stories tall? We are looking at a very dense community. I know we're not here to answer questions, but I do have major concerns. Most of these have been spoke about prior to this. I have been here 35 years. I have no intentions of leaving. I am still working in the community, and I am quite aware of some of the construction concerns. I am working for a major construction company in this county, and I do have concerns about what is being built here.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Marcia. Okay. Come right up, sir.
My name is Stephen Lee, but I'm reading remarks that were sent to me by Lori Seaman, who lives at 179 South Mountain Road in New City. Okay.
Excuse me, could you spell your first name? No, sir.
Her.
You have a sheet? Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're going to read a statement for her? Yeah, okay.
And your name is? Stephen. Stephen Lee. Thank you, Stephen. Sorry.
Okay.
To the town board, as a member of the Rockland Water Coalition, who has been working overtime to see that Rockland County does not resort to desalinated, radiated Hudson River drinking water, which would be exorbitantly expensive, I have a few questions for the Town of Ramapo supervisor and the boards. Why, Supervisor St. Lawrence, are you so vocal about no desalination for Rockland when you are not vocal about better water accountability in your own town? And why, and this is to the Ramapo Town Board and the Planning and Zoning Boards, do you not see the problem of shrinking up the healthy lands and waters around you to nothing? The decisions being made in Ramapo carry a liability for health and well-being of the people of Ramapo and the people of Rockland. There is a growing sentiment of intolerance towards the town of Ramapo for failing to be accountable in these matters. And it is time that the leaders of Ramapo ask, what aren't we doing? What are the better planning and management practices? As a member of the new Rockland County Water Resources Management Task Force, I see that it is imperative that all leaders become aware of the consequences of failing to take right actions at this time. We share in the concerns of the Ramapo River and the Mawa River. It is time to join forces and plan with helping one another. Please do not rezone so that poorly conceived projects can sneak through the standards. That is a shady practice. But then, if you cut down all the trees in this area, you'll be in full sunlight, and there will be no more places to hide. Your choices are not as you think, only about Ramapo. There is growing discontent around your town, and this cannot be good for the future of your town or for Rockland. Do as the people in the hearing tonight are asking. Build only with mindful zoning that adheres to respect for the life of the waterways, the aquifers, and the future of Rockland. Thank you for your consideration of my view. Signed, Lori Seaman.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? What we'll do is we will adjourn. We will ask the applicant and both applicants to answer all the questions that were put here tonight, and we will notify everyone that was here, and also publicly, but individually from the list of people when the next public hearing will be on this. And we'll adjourn it until that time and continue the public hearing.
I believe the
And
next,
we will take any written comments as well.
I believe the next evening meeting of the town board is December 10th. Would that be?
So why don't we, later in our meeting, when we continue our regular board meeting, we will set December 10th as the next public hearing date.
I would,
for this.
Mr. Supervisor, member of the board, I would also advocate that we do at least 2 more public hearings.
Absolutely. Okay.
Let's make sure.
December 10th. So we'll be continued to December 10th. Thank you all very much for coming out. Okay, the...
Hey, George, we, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the professionalism that you showed versus her and the rest of your board. So thank you very much. No, it finally came out. Yeah. More people looking like me. But if we're gonna start studying our own town planners and resources, we could do that too. You know? So we're gonna start sending our own town plans and stuff. Beware of the ask
It's adjourned. Till moved by.
Adjourned by Debbie and Grandel second.
All in favor?
Okay, should we do this?
You want a recess? Yeah, all right, let's go.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes for the regular meeting of August 21st. Oh, who's not there? I don't care. He's got it on. Yeah, okay. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Brendel Logan. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carried unanimously. On the minutes of the special meeting of October 8th. Moved by Friedman, seconded by Ullman. On the acceptance of the minutes for the regular meeting of October 2nd. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carried unanimously. And the acceptance of the minutes for the regular meeting of November 6th. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carried unanimously. Okay, we'd ask everybody, we want to finish our meeting. We still have the rest of the meeting to go, so if people would just carry their conversations into the hallway. Michael, our town clerk, our town attorney now will...
We have 2 resolutions for the approval of agreements. The first of these is to accept the payment of $8,144 from the county for the Town of Arapahoe Youth Court.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The next resolution amends a prior resolution regarding the retention of Daniel Duthie. So this increases the rate, the allotment which we're paying Mr. Duthie for various litigation matters.
We're on number
2A2.
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 Amendment of the agreement for the special counsel. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next resolution, 2B1, is an extension of our current agreement with Ameriflex for the flexible spending account.
Withers.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
2C1 is a resolution regarding our special environmental counsel, Kimberly Ray. This corrects the date of the prior resolution, which should have been 2011 and not 2013.
Withers.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next three resolutions involve tax certiorari proceedings. The first is by PMB Realty LLC. It involves a tax refund of $1,302.20 for years 2010 through 2015.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Hillcrest Eckerson Corporation is the property owner, which is the subject of the next certiorari matter. This involves a refund of
You can come closer if you want.
$331.21 and covers tax years 2010 through 2015.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Withers.
Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
And the third resolution involving a tax certiorari matter involves All Souls Community Church, Inc. This is an exemption.
Mona, tell them, would people please go out and continue your conversation in the hallway?
Excuse me, folks. We had the patience to listen to everyone. Will you allow us to do our business now? Thank you.
Okay, Council.
2E in the agenda is an approval of applications for retroactive tax exemptions. Two of these are Village of Montebello properties, and one of these...
Yeah.
What did we do with All Souls? I didn't get that motion.
All Souls was Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilwoman Charles.
Thank you.
And it passed unanimously. And now we're on 2E.
2E, and this is for approval of three applications to the state legislature for retroactive exemptions on real property.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Withers.
Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. We did already the three, so Nat, I'll just do the finance. It's the American Recycling Dare donation. Moved by?
Withers. Charles.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item 4.
I'm sorry, that was it. Sorry, Charles Withers.
Yes. And 4B is the amendment of the capital budget to the debt service. Moved by?
Withers.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next is purchasing. Mona Montello, Director of Purchasing.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Item 5A, one is the acceptance of the bids for the printing of the 2015 Summer Activities and Facilities brochure. We're asking you to accept the bid of Star Press of Valley Cottage in the amount of $16,550.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Withers.
Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 5B1 is the preparation of a temporary protection plan for the Crow House, and you'll see that it's going to Brooker Engineering in the amount of $6,000.
Moved by Councilman Friedman, seconded by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 5B2 on the agenda is the acceptance of a proposal in reference to the preparation of a structural analysis for the Crow House. This is subject to a grant which we had received, and we're asking you to accept the proposal from Brooker Engineering, the amount of $17,900.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Withers.
Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 5C1 on the agenda is the acceptance of a proposal from Yankee Construction for the restoration of the Harmony Hall roof project.
Moved by Councilman Friedman, seconded by
Withers.
Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. And under general matters, we have the authorization to attend the Association of Town Conferences on February 15th through 18th. Moved by?
Withers?
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. The next item we did the acceptance of the gift. Well, we had him here, but we didn't vote on it. So
No, we
moved by
didn't. Withers.
Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Change of the December workshop and town board meeting dates. We're going to cancel the date on Christmas Eve.
Withers.
And we're going to keep the regular dates of December 8th and 10th, and also the other meeting in between. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Under new business, we had an item that we brought up on the skating rink, and moved by
Withers.
Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Were there any other new business items?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Motion, public participation. Anybody like to speak? Come right up.
Do you want? Go do something with the doors.
Oh, yeah. And while we are doing that, we also had another new business item. Did you speak to?
Hold on one second.
Okay. Okay. All right. We did kind of-
Yep.
Okay. Go right ahead, Robert. You have the floor.
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Monsey. I want to talk about a financial matter that I'm concerned of, and what I'm concerned about is the town continuing to bail out the Ramapo Local Development Corporation for work that's being done at the stadium and at Elm Street. In a resolution from December of 2013, the town bailed out the RLDC for $900,000 for Leonard Jackson. And at an August meeting, the town bailed out the Ramapo Local Development Corporation for $695,000. That was for their bond council of Pannone, Lopes, Devereaux, and West. And the town has also paid $14,700 for maintenance of the scoreboard at the stadium. This total comes to $1,609,700 of taxpayer money to bail out the Ramapo Local Development Corporation. I'd just like to know how much longer is this going to continue? Where is it going to end? It's has to be having some effect on the finances and the taxes in the town of Ramapo, that the taxpayers are continually getting the bill for these items. And I would like to know, is the board aware of this? And why are you continually bailing out the Ramapo Local Development Corporation? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak in public participation? Moved by Councilwoman Charles, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn.
Withers.
Seconded by Councilwoman Charles, moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.